All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack the incredibly complex geopolitical tightrope India is currently walking in West Asia. It's a region where ancient history literally meets modern ambition, and where every single move has massive global ripple effects. If you really want to understand the future of global power dynamics, you absolutely have to look here. Looking at our agenda for today, we're going to systematically zoom out from a single bilateral relationship to the massive macro shifts redefining the whole region. We'll hit the India-Iran connection, Chabahar as a strategic gateway, the impact of sanctions, China's rise, India's balancing act, and wrap up with the reality of cold peace. Let's get into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the India-Iran connection.
So India and Iran, their relationship isn't just some modern alliance of convenience. It's bound by shared history and deep civilizational ties, officially anchored by things like the Tehran Declaration. But today, they genuinely need each other for very practical, very urgent reasons. For India, Iran is a massive oil supplier, absolutely critical for keeping the lights on and securing its energy needs. Plus, India desperately needs a physical pathway into Central Asia. Since both nations share a pretty enduring rivalry with Pakistan, Iran provides that vital alternative route. It's a relationship built on deep mutual needs, but as we're going to see, it's also incredibly complicated.
Moving on to Section 2, Chabahar, the strategic gateway.
Think about this for a second. How exactly does India trade with Afghanistan without crossing Pakistan? For decades, India has wanted to move goods into Afghanistan and the broader Central Asian republics. But because they basically don't have permission to use the land route through Pakistan, they're geographically boxed in. They needed a highly specific geographical workaround. Well, to solve that massive puzzle, India anchored its strategy right in southeastern Iran. By helping develop the Chabahar Port on the Gulf of Oman, India created a vital sea-land route that entirely bypasses Pakistan. Under a 2016 trilateral agreement, India committed to developing this port along with a railway line to Zahedan up near the Afghan border. It's a really elegant solution to a massive geographical headache. Oh, and it also happens to serve as a perfect strategic counterweight to China's presence at the nearby Gwadar port in Pakistan. Which brings us to Section 3, Sanctions and Stumbling Blocks. Because, geopolitics is rarely a straight line. Back in 2015, the international community signed the JCPOA, what most of us call the Iran nuclear deal, which lifted heavy sanctions on Iran. But when the U.S. abruptly abandoned the deal under the Trump administration, severe banking and oil sanctions were immediately snapped back into place. And the collapse of that single agreement drastically altered the entire international playing field. And those sanctions, they sent absolute shockwaves straight to New Delhi. By May 2019, India had to completely stop its crucial oil imports from Iran. SATSA sanctions threw a massive wrench into India's energy security. But honestly, it got even worse for their infrastructure plans. Even though the U.S. actually granted a special waiver to let the Chabahar Port project continue, insane bureaucratic delays in the U.S. for clearing heavy equipment paralyzed the whole thing. It got so bad that Iran eventually dropped India from the port's rail construction entirely, basically citing those frustrating funding and operational delays. Now let's look at Section 4. Enter the Dragon, China's Rise. $400 billion. Just let that staggering number sink in for a second. With India's investments delayed and totally bogged down in red tape, a massive new player swooped in to fill the vacuum. That $400 billion represents China's 25-year comprehensive strategic partnership agreement with Iran. We're not just talking about a simple trade deal here. This includes massive allocations into Iran's transport and manufacturing sectors. While Western sanctions isolated Iran, Beijing saw a monumental opportunity and took it. The contrast between these two regional strategies is honestly stark. On one side, you have India's stalled efforts, plagued by bureaucratic delays, dropped from developing the Farzad B gas block, and struggling to navigate around U.S. sanctions. On the flip side, you have China's aggressive, well-funded Belt and Road Initiative. China basically bypassed U.S. sanctions using currency swaps, actively bought up sanctioned Iranian crude oil to prop up the economy, and they're even proposing a tie-up between Pakistan's Gwadar port and Chabahar itself. But Beijing's ultimate power play wasn't just throwing money around, it was diplomatic. For some quick context, since 1979, Iran and Saudi Arabia have been fierce regional rivals, constantly backing opposing sides across the Middle East. Things got so heated that in 2016, they severed ties completely. But then, in a 2023 shocker, their embassies reopened. Why? because China actually managed to broker a peace agreement between them. By stepping in as the peacemaker, China completely scrambled regional geopolitics, proving they're a powerful alternative to the traditional Washington-led order.
This takes us to Section 5, India's Delicate Balancing Act.
So, what exactly is New Delhi supposed to do when rivals are rapidly gaining ground and rewriting the rulebook? Well, first, we have to recognize why simply walking away is not an option. 70% of India's imported energy comes straight from West Asia. Beyond that, there are 11 million Indians living and working there, which makes India the largest recipient of foreign remittances from the region. I mean, West Asia is quite literally the lifeblood of India's economy. Because of this, India relies on an Act West policy. They maintain strict equidistance. That means staying friendly with both the Saudi and Iranian camps without becoming a hostile power to either one, and strictly opposing any military interventions. But hey, maintaining equidistance doesn't mean just sitting on the sidelines. To counterbalance China's rising influence, India has focused on a fascinating new geopolitical grouping known as the I2U2. This brings together India, Israel, the UAE, and the United States, is essentially acting as a new Quad for West Asia. By leveraging its massive workforce and really deepening ties with the US, UAE, and Israel, India is actively working to balance the scales of influence without directly confronting China or alienating its other regional partners. Finally, Section 6, the reality of cold peace. So with this newly brokered stability between historical arch-rivals like Saudi Arabia and Iran, we really have to ask, what kind of stability is this? This brings up a super important concept in international relations, the cold peace. A cold peace happens when two countries formally sign a treaty to end a war, but their governments and people continue to harbor this deep vocal disgust and mistrust toward one another. It basically reproduces the behaviors of a Cold War, the suspicion, the domestic antagonism, the constant feelings of victimhood, but it suppresses actual proxy wars. It's peace on paper, sure, but absolute hostility in spirit. To put that into perspective, just look at the historical relationship between Egypt and Israel. The Camp David Accords were a monumental diplomatic achievement that ended 5 prior wars, a total high point for peace. However, Egyptian popular support for the treaty tanked almost immediately after the 1981 assassination of Anwar Sadat and the 1982 invasion of Lebanon. Today, that treaty holds firmly on paper. It prevents all-out war. But severe societal mistrust means there's virtually no genuine warmth or real integration between the two nations. And that brings us right back to West Asia today. China pulled off a massive diplomatic triumph by getting Saudi Arabia and Iran back to the table. But given their decades of deep-seated proxy conflicts and massive ideological differences, will this relationship truly flourish into real regional cooperation? Or are we simply witnessing the dawn of another cold peace, just a disguised continuation of conflict on the geopolitical chessboard? It's a question